Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 100 of the Spice Squadron podcast.
Well, it's episode 50 of the podcast, but it's our
True.
100th video.
100th video,
Episode
50th
50.
episode.
50. We're out of our midlife crisis, and we're into old age now. We start losing our memory.
Do you think we'd make it to 50?
No, I thought we'd like. I thought we'd make it to 50, but I think it would have been like I still was under the impression we'd have maybe like 10 subscribers.
True.
And it would have been like
we would have kept going regardless.
We're just having fun.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of people out there who really like us, and we love you. And even in our old age, when we forget what and decks are good and how to build decks, and this new meta is confusing me, and just like an old person, it makes me angry, but it doesn't. I love it. But it's
certainly is a meta.
It's definitely not what we thought it was. But no, this is all possible because of you. That's you. That's right. You, not you. You though. You. We love you guys so much. Thank you so much. And we're doing we're back with our meta talks. So we last week, go watch last week's episode if you didn't. We run over the reveals that happened at GenCon. Bunch of really cool stuff. Super awesome mechanics. I hope those cards aren't exploitable next set. But
the other things that happened at GenCon was not one, not two, but 3 124-player events.
wild.
128-player events.
Wild. Like, actually insane. Three days. There was Swiss on every day and Top Cut on every day. And 3 different decks took out the wins each day.
Yep. Couldn't have been easy. Couldn't have been easy and just gone, all right, well, here's the deck that's won the 3 days and here's what you should play. Nope. 3 different decks.
Here's the real...
And somehow none of them was Sabine.
No, none of them was Sabine, which is why there was a lot of Sabine. There was a lot of Sabine.
There's a lot of yellow.
There is a lot of yellow. And I'm going to be the first to say it. There's a lot of jank in set 2 meta. Like, it's good. You can have a good deck.
Yep.
It can still be jank.
Oh, yeah.
And it is.
There's some jank. There's some jank.
Yeah, there's stuff like...
The jank, it's around.
There's this stuff that are in these decks that are like... We saw these cards and we're like, no way. And they're incredible because of like these weird little interactions. And it's awesome. We love to see this stuff. This is probably one of the healthiest metas I would say that we've ever been in the card game. It's not fairly dominated.
It's one of those weird things, right, where as a player, this varied meta is very good. As a deck builder, this varied meta is terrifying and horrible.
I love them. Because there's so many options now.
There's so many different options, and there's so many things you need to tech against.
Yeah, it's wild. A lot of one-ofs.
Tech against.
He's the king right now. It's his meta. Let's dive into it. So there was a cheeky. We're just gonna start off and we're gonna go down the list. First, we're gonna talk about the 3 decks that won each day, and then we're gonna talk about 3 notable decks that have risen up out of nowhere in the meta, and they either topped or won Swiss or did really well in the events, and we just wanted to talk
generally did quite well. The decks that we weren't expecting.
Shall we dive into numero uno, the one that you know, the one that you love?
You know him, you love him. He was around. He came up towards the end of the set 1 meta, and really took precedent over the established green version, and that's Boba Yellow.
Yeah, Uncle Boba, here he is.
He is indeed, and this deck is really interesting. This deck is really, really interesting. One of the really interesting things about this deck is it's actually pivoted.
Yeah.
Because Mono Yellow Boba was aggressive at times, but used Bodhi Rourke, used Cunning as more of control pieces. This deck has gone further down the route of aggression.
Yeah, it's fully aggro. And you know what's really interesting about the fully aggro angle to me about this deck? Is that the lurking ties are in the sideboard.
Yep.
Not in the main deck.
in this deck, it's not about sneakily getting around and getting damage in. It's about going, I'm going to smack you in the face. What are you going to do about it?
You give your opponent this whole deck's thing is you put 2 choices down. And either way, it's bad for your opponent, but you make them pick.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the deck. This is also a deck that, like, a bluffer's dream. Because you could set up the thing, and then if you bluff correctly, they pick the wrong option. Let's talk about a couple of the interesting inclusions in this deck. Firstly, we'll talk about the Mercenary Gunship, the 2-cost 3/2 grey fighter that has the pay 4, you gain control of it.
We said this was good back when we reviewed it. We said this was a good ship, a good generic ship to be able to fit into an aggro deck, and that's exactly its role here.
It's a good ship.
It's a good ship. A 2-cost 3/2 is good.
Smack hard. Like, and 90% of the time your opponent's never going to want to pay 4.
Yeah.
And if they're paying 4, newsflash, you've probably lost. Like,
or you've won.
Or you've won and they've just dropped it.
At the end of the day, that pay 4 ability pretty much doesn't exist. There's so many. It's so rare for that ability to actually be relevant in a game.
Absolutely. This, interestingly, with this deck, 3 Hotshot DL44 is the only non-yellow, but also kind of yellow card in the deck. Obviously, you smuggle it out, get the +2/+0, like, who's not going to love it, especially when you're being able to untap resources with Boba Fett. You could be left with 1 resource, and then that awkward number of, like, 3, where you would just play a 2-cost, becomes a hotshot onto a unit to swing for an extra 2, which is exactly what this deck
Hotshot is actually the replacement for Boba's armor here. You'll see no Boba's armor in this list, which is a very interesting take. I think obviously it's done very well here. I think Boba's armor in these like large tournaments is actually a card that I would probably try to sneak in here.
I would still run it personally.
Because I think against a lot of like the tier 2 matchups, it's almost an auto win to just flip Boba, put Boba's armor on it, and just go, all right, you can't deal with me.
Yeah, I would personally still run it. 1 card in this deck. Very spicy. Toro Calican.
Absolutely, and this card is very, very good. This card is...
it's a 3-cost 3/5.
Sure is.
And which is great stats already. And he has, when you play another bounty hunter, you may deal 1 damage to it. If you do, untap Toro Calican. This ability resolves only once each phase.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty interesting. And you might be going, that doesn't seem very good. But, the main play people do with this is on the turn you flip Boba Fett. You pay 4. You play Cunning. You pick one of the options, whichever it may be. Tap 2 things.
Tap 2 things usually is.
And then you give. So you swing with your Toro Calican first for 3, and then you give him +4/+0 again. So you give him +4/+0.
Well, you give him +4/+0 first and swing for 7.
Either or. A lot of people, they actually swing first for a bit of a mind game. They swing first, and then they go, you take 3, and then your opponent does something, and then they go pay 4. Cunning, give him +4/+0. And then your opponent has to toss up, okay, you're going to flip Boba Fett here. So do I remove Toro Calican and let you flip Boba Fett, or do I attempt to remove Boba Fett? And then if they remove Boba, you pay 1 and you play Greedo, and he pings the Greedo for 1 and untaps, and then you swing for 7.
And then maybe ping something for 2 as well.
Yeah. Or they kill Toro and you flip Boba, and then you swing Boba and untap 2 and slap the armor on him. Or you do something else. You swing Boba, untap 3, pay 3, put a DL on something else.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird because this card just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. I've been playing around with this card a little bit with a Grand Inquisitor deck that I've been toying with. And I have been using this, and I was like, man, this is really good. So when I saw it in this kind of Boba list, I was like, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of those cards that snuck by, and like in pre-release, I was like, this guy's good. I'm sure he has a place. I've seen people go as far to build Yellow Boba with like 3 of that and 3 Bounty Guild Initiate, because you can play it and ping something for 2 as well. So like, which is a deck that personally I'd love to I'd love to play.
I'd be interested to be able to fit Hunter of the Haxian Brood in here as well.
Oh yeah.
I think that could definitely be a card that can kind of
If
go
it-
hand in hand
If
here.
there's a bounty unit, you can ping the shield off. If not, 4/2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot that this deck can do,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot we already knew it could do. Like new adventure, anything in this deck, right? Like new adventure, it's top end plays of Zuckuss, Forlom, Waylay, like Cantina Bouncer, or the best option, of course, is the Fire Spray, right? You swing the Fire Spray, you bounce the Fire Spray,
you swing the Fire Spray.
And
And it's it's nuts because it's stuff like where you pay 6, you play the Fire Spray, you swing the Fire Spray, you swing with Boba, you untap 2, you bounce the Boba. Like on that
that's
turn.
14 damage.
That's the
14
turn
damage.
after Boba,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Where you already have done a
Right
bunch of damage
after.
with Toro.
Yep.
This has wild swinging turns.
Yeah, its damage is so explosive, and it's why it's one of the currently the best aggro decks in the format. And then it also gets the addition of Yellow Disruption. You got your Waylays to deal with cards like Charleston,
Which is huge
and,
at the moment.
and cards like Lurking Tie. You've got No Good to Me Deads, which is like that can shut down Sabine turns. By just they load up one Battlefield Marine with a bunch of stuff, and you go,
Yep.
yeah, really cool. No Good to Me Dead.
Yeah. But this is like, you might be looking at this deck list and being like, man, this isn't like the Boba that I know.
No.
And it's not.
It's not. It's not the Boba you know.
This is an aggro deck that paces with Sabine.
Yep. This is an aggro deck that wants your opponent. Interestingly enough, the main times that you get the Boba ability off is not because you're swinging to your opponent's stuff, it's because they're desperately trying to stop you and start trading into your own
Yep.
stuff. So you're like, okay, you've just traded your own unit into mine, sweet. Swing, untap 2. I get value from your unit dying. Doesn't matter to
Absolutely.
me. So I can definitely see why this deck is good. I mean, obviously, in the sideboard, it's got 3 Bodhi Rooks, 3 Lurking Ties. It's got a Relentless Pursuit, which I believe it runs one of in the main deck. It does not. It's also got a one of Change Your Heart. It's got another one of what's the gunship called? Cartel Spacer that taps stuff down.
Yep.
It's got a one of Syndicate Lackeys. It's got a one of Change of Heart. So some interesting stuff there. I agree with the one of Change of Heart. Syndicate Lackeys for me seems redundant if you're running Forlom and Zuckuss, just because that's pretty good. But I guess in some matchups it's good to have the 5 power. Relentless Pursuit's really, really good. There have been a lot of games where someone's played it against me and I've just like lost. Someone's like put it under their Boba with Boba's armor and put a shield on him, and I'm like,
pretty good.
my unit's gone forever. Like, so I can definitely see where this deck is coming from.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's just built on what Boba was doing previously and really gone onto the style of let's blast face and absolutely go hard, and it absolutely does, because you have turns like you're saying, right? In this turn where you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to I played Toro turn 3, whatever. And then this turn, I'm going to Cunning, tap the 2 things that you had on board that can swing at me. Say you have a leader that drops at 6, so you can't put a leader out. Awesome, you're not really doing any damage back to me now. I'm going to buff Toro for 4. I'm going to swing for 7 into your base.
Yeah. You know,
I'm going to play. I'm going to flip Boba. I'm going to swing into something and kill it. Untap 2. I'm going to tap 1, play Greedo, untap Toro, and then surprise strike for 10 into your base.
you still get the ping with Greedo too.
And you still get the ping with
ping
Greedo.
with Greedo, flip, ping something for 2. Like,
Also, you can even do it that way. You can go, all right, flip Boba, Greedo, ping it, kill something, 4 into base, surprise strike, 10 into base. And that is
explosive damage.
like 17. That's 21 damage.
One of my favorite things
one
about
round.
this deck is that there are 2 legendaries in it. The 3-cost Boba Fett. And if I'm completely honest, that card's not that, like, it's fine. It's not that great, this set.
It does have a good place in this deck because it's a bounty hunter.
It does. But
And it's in that situation where you don't want to like maybe kill Greedo, you can be like, all right, swing with Boba, untap 2, play.
for those of you who want a budget option, Hunter of the Haxian Brood, you could also run Bounty Guild Initiate. It's a 1/2. It won't die from the Toro Calican ping. So if you're ever in a position where you're like, oh, this looks awesome, but I really I really want to play it, but I don't have the Bobas. You don't necessarily need them.
I genuinely think Hunter of the Haxian Brood is just as good as Boba here.
It's a 4/3 in a deck that wants to be aggressive. A lot of the time, this Boba is in there for your slower matchups where you maybe want to ping one or two things or try to get through to like a Sentinel or something. But a lot of the time, to be completely honest with you, it's not coming up.
Yeah.
And ultimately, stuff like this can be a lot better. Because, if you are dealing with a pesky Sentinel, if you really want to, you can pay one Hunter Guild Initiate, pay one Hunter Guild Initiate, ping something for 4, untap Toro. You've just gone wild with 2 more bodies. Swing Boba, untap 2, swing Toro. Next turn you've got 2 1/2s. Yeah, they're not great, they're 1/2s, but they're still good enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be surprised with what you can do with them, especially if, someone just is like, oh, I claim, and then you go, cool, Cunning, give this +4/+0, bounces back to your hand, swing for 5, and out of nowhere they're like, whoa.
But with Forlorn and stuff coming out, I'm not huge on the Zuckuss. I think Zuckuss is a little bit of a weird one where...
I think he's still really... I think the thing with Zuckuss is, you run 3 Forlorn and 3 Zuckuss because, yes, Zuckuss isn't great, but... Zuckuss isn't great by himself. If you get him with Forlorn out, though, it's probably one of the most insane things in the game. It just can win you the game off of being yep, here we go, doink. So I think that's where it comes in, is because we know Forlorn's incredible. He's just a better Bosk. He does what Bosk wants at a turn earlier. He does what Syndicate Lackeys wants at a turn earlier. Yeah. And the added benefit is that you also get to run Zuckuss, who is an insane house in this deck. Especially when, if someone's not ready for it, you can be pay 2, swing Forlorn, pay 2, bounce Forlorn, play him back, swing that in, swing Boba, untap 2, pay 6, Zuckuss, and then I think just giving yourself the option of that, and if you don't want it in those games, side it out or resource it.
Yeah, I think that's not bad. I think this deck is really fun. I think this deck is really good, and I am fully in the camp of I understand why this won.
Yeah, same. I think it's really, really, really good.
Shall we move on to the day 2 winner now?
We shall. Give me 1 sec. Dad just called me. I need to text him my recording. Day 2.
Moving on to day 2. Who won day 2?
Kira Green.
Kira Green. We knew this deck existed. We knew people were high on this deck.
Oh, yeah.
We weren't sure how it was going to show up to a tournament, and it has shown up. This deck is a very interesting deck. It's a deck that's...
got 5 one-ofs. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting, and if we include the one-ofs in the sideboard, it's got 6 one-ofs.
Anyway. You know how we feel about one-offs on this channel. If you think 1 should go in, probably 2 should go in.
Consistency bump. Sometimes having a cheeky one-off is nice, but we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to one of the other decks from later. But interesting deck. It's an interesting deck because I look at all these pieces and I go, yes, this is an Iden deck, but all these cards are used completely differently than an Iden Krennic Green.
Yeah. So this deck thrives more on units. It doesn't have a whole lot, but it definitely has a bunch of units that go really hard in it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it plays so differently to Iden specifically. Krennic, not as much. Krennic also
Iden
having
Green,
been. Yeah.
It's very interesting to see how yes, there's all of the same cards in here, but it's just so different. I think notably Kira uses Overwhelming Barrage better than these leaders.
Yes.
I think it would be silly to discount that at least.
And I think one of the weird things is with Iden, you get a 4/4 shielded. With Kira, you get a 4/4. But Kira is more dangerous because it's so easy to accidentally ping some more damage onto her. And then suddenly she's a 7/1.
And then, if you're not realizing that, her Overwhelming Barrage gets better.
Yeah.
We were talking about it last week with the Hailfire tank and Overwhelming Barrage and being able to just turn, what is it, turn 3 or something, turn 4, just 9 Overwhelming Barrage damage. This deck can do that now. If you're not paying attention, Kira can flip, nuke everything, and then just swing into something, and you're like, oh, claim, and then she goes, awesome, wipe your whole board, swing, 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 and you're like, whoa, my god.
There's even the situation where she does it, she overwhelming barrages, you go, oh, next turn, and they go, oh, awesome, sick. Here's my Death Trooper. Now she's a 6/2.
Yep.
Like this deck has Kira is very dangerous in a way where yes, she can be easily dealt with.
She's really swingy.
But she's also like, if you don't have the ability to deal with her, she's more dangerous than Iden.
Yeah, and she's got that tap ability, which is really good for cards like the Death Star DJ's in here. If you're playing against someone who's like, oh, I'm not going to attack it, then you can be like, sure, tap, ping it, kill it, for free.
And a lot of the time, people are thinking, awesome, that 1 cost 1/4. That's what it's used for. The Pike Sentinel, it's used for a lot, and stuff like that. But the biggest thing this thing is used for is Avenger, is Snoke, is Relentless.
Devastators. You just put shields on them.
Yeah, because you don't care about the 2 damage because he's got a shield. He's going to, whatever damage they're soaking up is usually swinging into another capital ship, which is going to be doing more than 2 damage anyway. So you doing 2 damage and getting the shield to be able to block that damage is just plussing. Yeah,
especially when there's stuff like Redemption in the game and Home 1, where you're playing against Casino Han and it drops like a Home 1. And a lot of the time, they're out to your Avenger is trading into it with a Home 1.
Yeah.
Or playing a Redemption and be like, heal up, and it's a Sentinel, so if you want to get in, you have to trade. And then you go, shield. And they go, that does it.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Obviously, I think the Vader over Maul here is actually a very smart choice.
I agree.
Especially with how good we know Death Trooper Vader is.
Yeah.
And being able to get that ping, I think it's huge. Gideon Hask in this deck does Gideon Hask. Gideon Hask is a fantastic card that is just...
One thing I want to bring up is Gideon Hask is exceptionally good in this deck, because if you're playing against a slower control deck, you can pay 3, play the Death Star DJ. Or if you're playing against someone who's purposely trying to stop you, they tap it down. They're like, I'm not going to let you do it. Tap, ping it, kill it, resource. You're at 5 now. Pay 5, Gideon Hask. You have control over the ramp. And I think that's huge. And Hask is insane. We know Hask is insane. So being able to just do that. And you've got the classic where you can ambush him out. One card that is actually super good to ambush out is Lon Pike.
Lon Pike in general is a
so
powerhouse of this deck. I'm amazed that it's only being
Lon
run as
Pike's
2
a
of.
powerhouse. He's actually really come up just out of nowhere.
I'm amazed that this is a 2 of in this deck.
Yeah.
I'd
make it a 3.
I would personally make it a 3 of. I think Lon Pike is one of the best cards at the moment for blue villain. I think his ability to be like, okay, give that a shield, give me a shield, be able to do damage, and then you're like, all right, take down it.
Yep.
You just take down whatever you put 3 shields on something.
It just doesn't matter. You kill it, or you've killed it, and they go, okay, do this, and you go sick power of the dark side. Yeah. And then they're like the shield doesn't matter. It does it
you have so many ways around the shield.
You're giving them the shield because you're going to kill it anyway, and you're just signaling to your opponent that it's going to die. Yeah. And at which point they might make a bad play, and then you don't kill it, and then they're like, oh, whoops.
But this Kira deck, I've watched it a few times in GenCon, and this was Wu that brought this deck. I saw his game play, and he pilots this deck extremely well. Yeah. But when this deck is piloted extremely well, it has that effect that Iden had back in set 1, where it is a case of I feel like everything that I do is just being countered. Everything I do is just having that next thing thrown on top of it. And I think this is the evolution of Krennic Green.
I agree.
Honestly,
yeah, options.
It's a different deck, but it's also I think an upgrade on the Krennic Green.
Yeah, I think again, I want to touch on Vader quickly again because I think his value in this is incredible. Because what's the best case scenario? Death Trooper. What's the worst case scenario? A High Loben Enforcer and a Pike Sentinel.
Yeah, or Black Sun Starfighter.
The Client. Inferno 4.
The Client.
Those are your worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
You probably play it and you're like, I'm aiming for a Death Trooper. And your worst options are Black Sun Starfighter, Pike Sentinel, Inferno 4, High Loben Enforcer with either of those, or the client.
Yeah, you're pretty happy with
Like-
any of those.
Those aren't bad options.
Absolutely.
And then you just go, oh, all right, tap ping Vader for 2, put a shield on him. Like, what?
Yeah.
So
And
good.
it's that case where, like, yeah, it's, as I said, like, putting that 2 damage and a shield on big units like that. Like, you ambush him in, say he's got 3 health left. You go, cool, ping 2 damage on him, give him a shield. I'll take a 5-1 shielded over a 5-3 any day.
Any day. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, a lot of what this deck does is what Krennic Green and Iden Green did in set 1, but it's just an upgrade.
I think it's like, as much as we say, like, and I've said it before, and I'll say it, like Kira's turn 5 play is predictable, but it's also not to be understated in a way where it can just wipe your board. It can act as a one-sided overwhelming barrage a lot of the time, where it's just like, oh, what happened? I just lost the game suddenly, and that's not to be understated in any way, and how good that can be.
I personally feel that she's maybe still not as good as Iden Green if it was running this deck, and I could be wrong on that. That's just my opinion. I still think Iden maybe has the edge with the healing and things like that, and I definitely don't think it's understated that yes, her flip turn is incredible with the overwhelming barrage, but I think if someone could prepare for it, they kind of get you.
I genuinely think this deck is a better deck than Iden.
That's fair.
I think this deck, I think the ability to early game trade with this deck is amazing. And the ability to say, okay, you're playing Sabine, you played Battlefield Marine, I'm going to go, awesome, Pike Sentinel. Shield it.
Yeah.
And you're wasting a bunch of swings into something, and then I'm just clearing your board on turn turn 5.
It's essentially effectively like an echo-based defender at that point.
And it's so easy to be like, oh, but if you're just swinging base in something like Sabine, and you go, awesome, Sabine, and then the next turn I just go, awesome, I cleared your entire board, that can just shut it down.
Yeah. I think the deck's really good. I think this deck's hella jank.
Hella jank.
This is the one that really took us by surprise. Literally, actually came out of nowhere.
Yep, I was not expecting to see this deck up there. Did not put this on my bingo card of things to see in the meta of set 2 of Star Wars Unlimited.
It's the Age of Han.
It is mono yellow Han, not yellow green Han like you've been seeing during set 1. Mono yellow Han, and this thing is a beast.
It uses a lot of disruption.
A lot of disruption.
The deck's whole purpose is to generate value while you disrupt your opponent, and then you just win off of like plinking them down.
Yeah, it's just a deck that says, okay,
it has one main combo.
It's not I've won, it's I will win.
Yeah, it's I will. Yeah, the whole point is like I will win. It's not just like it will get you in a position where it's like I've won. It'll constantly keep you feeling like I can make a comeback, and then you try and then it stops you. And it's got one big combo that it loves.
And this is a combo that kind of came around just as this started coming out.
Literally, I think like a week beforehand, people were like,
yeah, and
put it in their decks.
That is
DJ and Tech and DJ.
We heard about this combo a little bit before, like probably about a couple weeks before this event.
My hotshot DL. Go check out gameplay. My hotshot DL 44.
And I remember being like, oh my god, you can do this. That's hilarious. I don't think it's good, but it's hilarious. Yeah. And then people realized that you could do Han and then destroy the
resource,
stolen,
effectively de-ramping your opponent.
And ramping yourself.
Which is cooked.
Real good.
Real cooked.
And that's to say, it's easily counterable.
It is. Just
being able to kill Tech, being able to kill DJ before the turn's up. Both of these are extremely doable goals. Yeah. Right?
I think the problem is it just takes people out of like...
The thing is, you have to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, you have to have the out. You have to find the thing. Otherwise, it's really crippling.
And the problem is they have ways to stop you from having the out. They've got 3 Bodhi Rooks. They've got 2 Spark of Rebellions. Like, they've got enough to be like, I don't want you to have the out, so I'm not going to let you. And they just... they've also got 2 Kira so they could look at your hand.
The turncoat is an interesting addition here. I did not see that
It
in the
is
deck.
an interesting card.
Um,
I honestly, I'll be completely honest here. I have no idea why it's there. Zero idea.
but a lot of this just makes sense. The bouncing of the bouncer, the
Waylay.
3 Hans, the 3 Cunnings, the 3 Ezra. I'm happy to see Ezra back in the mix. 'Cause I feel like Ezra became one of those things where kind of went full circle for me.
Yeah.
Of like Ezra was amazing, and then Ezra was being removed every time you played him because he was
So he
too
kind of
amazing,
was like,
and then
meh.
you kind of stopped playing him because you're like, oh, Ezra isn't very good. He gets removed every
But
time I
what's
play
funny
him.
is that the deck runs Ezra because of that.
Yeah.
So run Ezra so you can play him, and then if your opponent goes, oh my god, and they kill him, you go, all right, play tech next turn, and then your opponent goes, I definitely just wasted my removal on Ezra, and if they don't waste their removal on Ezra, all right,
Card advantage.
I've got Ezra. Like
Ezra's just good. We
it's
knew
just like,
Ezra was good.
It just in this deck, you've got Ezra, you've got tech, you've got so many kill on sites that it just is like.
You've also got you've also got 3 Cunning, 3 Bouncer, and 3 Waylay. Like
Yep.
whatever you play is not staying on the board for very long.
Yep. You've also got 3 L3 to get remove of captured units and also just have a crafty smuggler.
Yeah.
You've got 2 layer to deal with your big tap downs. You've got 2 Kira because that card is insanely good.
Yep.
And then you've got 3 Han Solo 7 cost, and you've got 2 Falcon 6 cost from set 2, which essentially is a Han Solo in space.
Yeah.
They fulfill that niche.
Yeah,
so Han
absolutely.
Solo, Han
Ambush it
Solo
in,
will
kill
ambush
something.
it in on the ground. Falcon will ambush it into space.
Absolutely, and I think this is a deck that is, this is more of a control deck.
Yeah.
We've seen what Mono Yellow can do as an aggro deck with Boba. This is not that. This is not an aggro
This
deck.
is
This
a
is not a
control.
race deck. This is a full-blown Mono Yellow control deck in my eyes.
Yep, you can even tell by looking at its sideboard. It's got 2 of the, I can't remember his name, is Woody Harrelson's character from the Solo movie. It's got 2 of the Smuggler's Aid. It's got 3 Confiscate, and then it's got an extra Syndicate Lackeys, an extra Spark of Rebellion, and an extra Change of Heart, just in case you want to bump those numbers up.
Absolutely, and this is a Go Tall's worst nightmare.
Oh, is that a big lurking tight boink?
This is to me, I look at this and this is anti-upgrade.
Yep.
This is anti-upgrade. This is anti, build up.
Interestingly, it's anti-control control. You just look at their hand, remove their pieces.
Absolutely.
It wants you to play, like, if someone's like, I'm going to play control and I'm going to be slow, and you go, awesome, Spark of Rebellion turn 1, Bodhi Rook turn 2, I'm going to tech this turn, and then they go, yep, I can't stop you, and you go, awesome. Next turn, DJ, steal your resource, and they go, good game.
I've had it before where, because you do the whole turn 2, you play tech, turn 3, you ramp with Han, you tap 5, you play DJ, and then I've had it so where I was versing a Boba, and I played DJ, and they couldn't deploy Boba anymore because they went down to 4 resources.
Yep.
Because they were doing stuff they cleared my turn 1 play, and then I played DJ, I took it, and they went flip Boba, and I went, whoop, you're only actually at 4 resources, so you can't flip Boba.
Yep.
And they went, and I was like, yep, cool. End of the turn, I'll destroy your resource,
Yep.
and I'll go to 6 next turn because I've ramped.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
It's a dangerous play, and it's one of those things where it's not game breaking in a way where it can't be stopped, but there are definitely moments very similar to Boba's armor, in my opinion, where if it happens and you don't have an out to it, you just go, yeah, that's it.
Got me. There is it also can just stop Sabine's deployment by doing the exact same thing. If the Sabine player is not paying attention and you've got a tech out and you ramp, and then they do something else, or they swing before they, let's say the first you've claimed, first thing you do is ramp, and the second thing and they're like, oh cool, I'll swing, and then you go, awesome, I'm at 5 now, pay 5. DJ, steal this resource, you're at 3.
Yeah.
And Sabine player goes, uh-oh,
Yep.
suddenly the Darksaber's useless, suddenly your leader's useless, and then you just destroy that resource and you're left with 2 3/5s, which are so difficult for that deck to trade
Tech
into.
is a 2/5.
Tech is a 2/5? Yep. Sorry, you're left with a 3/5 and a 2/5, which is so difficult for Sabine to trade into and actually get rid of
Yep.
it, that by the time it's happened, it's over. And then the next turn, you're able to flip their Han leader on the same turn they flip their Sabine.
Yeah. And then worst case scenario, you go, okay, here's tech, and they go, oh shit, Fleet Lieutenant, swing my Battlefield Marine to kill tech.
And
You go, sick.
sick. Look at this Sentinel.
Yeah, I love my 2/5 Sentinel.
Pay 3, play Tech. And then
Pay three, play Ezra.
Yeah.
Pay 3, play a Falcon. Play 3, play Bodhi Rook. Take that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that Darksaber. Yeah, nah.
Yep, get out of here.
Get
and
out
then
of here.
next turn, you just play a Gamorrean Guards.
Yep. This has a lot of different. You look at this deck, and I think we all looked at this deck and went, "This is janky as hell. What is this trying to do?" But once you realize where all these pieces sit and how they can play in an actual game, and I think this is one of the biggest things of sometimes you can see a deck and go, "That's going to be amazing. That's an amazing thing," and then you play it in a game, you go, "Oh, this has not lived up to the expectations." This is the opposite. This is a deck that does not look like much on paper, but will absolutely you'll be like,
Why is this happening?
I wasn't in this game at all.
Yeah, what is happening? You're running the bounty hunter ship, and they're like, I'm running that 1-cost bounty ship. You're like, what's happening? Like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And that's exactly the case. Like, that deck just came out of nowhere, and it has options and it has answers. Its main gimmick is that it can steal the resource, and it is easy to play around people who are unprepared. I think this deck is an incredibly good deck if the player is really good. A lot of the time, there's no way they're going to lose because that player can reassess and pivot around the strategy of, oh, you've killed the tech, that's fine. If you're not a great player and you're relying too hard on that gambit, you lose.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things. Like, if you're like, I have to get this gambit off to win games, then you've fallen into a trap of a gimmick deck, right? Where this isn't actually a gimmick deck, and it can be easily misconstrued as a gimmick deck.
It's a deck that has gimmicks.
Yeah. And that's why we call it a jank deck, because it has these gimmicks that are like, if you almost trap you and be like, if you don't focus too hard on it.
It's insane.
But if you do it, just do it.
You just lock in, and if you can lock in hard enough and you're a good enough player, you'll be able to beat this deck. But the same goes if your opponent is an incredibly good player at this game and they pick this deck up, and you're like, awesome, I've stopped the tech play, what now? And then they just play around you, you're cooked.
Yeah.
But those were the 3 winners.
Those were the 3 winners.
Those are interesting decks.
We're going to go through 3 more decks now, a little bit faster than we did the.
We're just going to briefly talk
ones.
about 3 decks that kind of popped up. One deck is Sabine, because
it's Sabine. We have to talk about Sabine.
We're just going to be like, here she is. She's still relevant in the meta. Here's the changes. Do you just want to do that first?
Let's just do that first.
Let's just do that first.
So Sabine Green is the biggest one going around. There were a couple Sabine Yellows, but the Sabine Green was placing higher.
Yeah, Sabine Green is the deck.
And
there is not a lot that has changed.
Essentially, the thing that has changed with Sabine is now she has a late game.
Yeah.
Her early game is still almost the exact same.
Yeah.
She now has a late game, and that is the biggest thing about her.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we've added in is, for the most part, Darksaber. We've talked about it. You put it on Sabine, she's a beast.
Put on something else and it buffs Sabine.
Poe Damadam, that man is Damafine and Damadam.
Ambush him in with the base.
Yep.
And then you get the discard and get the buff, and it's just a whole thing.
Yep.
Again, ambush it in with the base. It's Wrecker. You ambush him and you don't care about your resources once Sabine is flipped, so you just smash the resource out, ping something for 4, smack into it. Ping something for 5, then smack into it, kill something. The damage goes over their base. Then you're left with the Wrecker.
Yeah, Wrecker's somehow even better than Poe in this situation, because it goes, awesome. Does that thing have 6 health? And you go, yeah, and it goes, awesome. Ping it for 5, then swing 7 into it.
You take
6 goes over.
Yeah, and then most of the time Wrecker's left to be alive. You've also got Cassian. This deck is just the Cassian is just the Falcon of the ground. You pay 5. Like, some people have lost the game because they'll just be like, oh, I need to do this, all right, claim, and then you go, awesome, pay 5, smuggle him out, swing, good game. Like, it's just, and then
it happens a lot.
Timely intervention, because just being able to ambush, if you can ambush early game with something and then ambush again late game with like a Wrecker. So like if you ambush a Wrecker in with the base and kill something, and then they kill your Wrecker, and then the next turn you just go sick, pay 1, ambush a second wrecker in.
There's essentially
yeah.
Daring Raid is
Extra
like it's just a little bit extra damage,
Yeah.
and it 2 damage to base is not to be scoffed at.
Yeah, with your leader it can be 3, and there
yeah.
have definitely been games where, you know, someone's stolen victory from the jaws of defeat because they've been on like 3 health but made a huge comeback by being like home 1 or reinforced.
There's the thing, it's like turn 5, they've cleared your board out, and they're on 23 life, and you go, okay, 4 calls I believe in, tap Sabine, Daring Raid. For 7 damage, right?
Yep.
That's almost a third of their life that you've just been like, right at the end, just been like, bang, got it.
They could even have 10 health and you can do something like that, and then just, you know, if you draw a Daring Raid or a For a Cause, you win. Because you drop them to 3 health and then you just go, there you go. So, yeah. Sabine does Sabine things, and now she has a few more cards that help her do Sabine things.
Absolutely. She smacks base hard. It's still one of the fastest decks. Which is actually, no, I disagree with that. There are faster decks, but there are not decks that can do it as consistently.
Yes.
There are decks that are more explosive and faster, but there is no deck that can do as consistent high damage as Sabine can.
There are decks that can kill you quicker than Sabine could.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, they can do that maybe 1 out of 4 times, whereas Sabine is going to be doing the same things 4 out of 4 times.
Yeah.
And that's where, like...
And then on a top end, she can kill you in 3 turns. So.
Yeah, yeah. And look, we've said it again, we'll say it before, consistency is key in card games. Like, if you can make something that's good and keep it consistent, you've probably got something that's better.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you know me, I love business. I love good business.
No one thought this deck would be here.
I did. I didn't.
No, you didn't.
I didn't.
Don't lie to my face.
I guess the words I'm looking for is, I hoped. I hoped someone would build a good Hondo deck, and
Someone did.
someone did. Someone built a really good Hondo deck. Once again,
specifically,
this deck is jank. Like, I look at this list and I'm like, there are certainly cards in this deck, and there's like good cards, and then there are weird cards, but they do work.
Absolutely.
Like, really well.
This deck is hoisted onto the shoulders of 2 cards in particular, and that is Covert Strength.
Yep.
Being able to tap 3 to heal something for 2 and put 2
experience counters
on them with Hondo. And Timely Intervention, which its interactions now are that you can Timely Intervention,
Anything.
ambush something in, then like put something down, put a counter on it, then ambush it.
Yep. Which is amazing with cards like Charlton.
Oh yeah.
With cards like the client.
Mm-hmm.
With cards like Super Commando Squad. Because Super Commando Squad becomes a Sentinel if they are upgraded and they're shielded. So you can play it down, give it a counter, swing and kill something with a 5/5, and then remove the counter, remove the shield, but still have a 5/5 Sentinel. Or, my favorite, Lompike.
Yeah, Lompike.
Here he is.
We said he was an absolute beast with the Kira deck. He is absolute beast with this too.
He also has Smuggle.
He also has Smuggle.
He's a 4-cost, 4/6. In this deck, he's a 5/6 if you ambush him in or smuggle him in. And if you ambush him in, when he attacks you, just pick him to get the shield anyway, and be like, oh, and that can have a shield, I guess. And then you just kill it. And then, like, the small thing they have has got a shield, and next turn you either Power the Dark Side, make an opening, take down it.
The same thing we were talking about the Kira deck, right? It's that situation where you don't care if they have a shield because you're blue, and you don't care. Worst case scenario, you're gonna go, okay, oh no, I'll make an opening.
I like Top Target in this deck a lot. It's got 2 copies of Top Target. For those of you who don't know, its upgrade, put it on a unit. When defeated against Bounty, I think it's heal 4, and then if it's a unique unit, you heal 6 to your base.
Sure
that's cool, and that's really great because it adds that element of healing. Like, the client's in this deck, he's not really in the deck for the Bounty portion. He's actually mainly in the deck because he's a 3/5 shielded that become a 4/6 shielded ambusher when you play it with Timely Intervention. Which is gross. Like, a lot of this deck's power comes from the fact that you can ambush in powerful shielded units and make them even better by giving them 1/1 counters, and then flip Hondo, who admittedly is a very good leader on his flip side because he can constantly buff himself or do other things. And then your late game is Maul, Snoke, And you've even got a 1 of First Light in there, and then if you need it, a Super Laser Blast. And the sideboard's got some more Super Laser Blasts and things like that. But
For the more
ultimately,
control matchups.
for more control matchups. But ultimately, like, you've got all the stuff you need in here. You've got your Vigilances, all that kind of stuff. And in the space, you've even got the 2-cost 2/2 that has Smuggle for 3. And
I think that's
reason it's just a cheap Smuggle to get counters out.
And I think that's one of the big things I think with this Hondo deck is it's just always got a smuggle card to play. It's always got a smuggle card to play.
That's your business.
That weird and in that situation where a lot of people were going for the more like deck that you were going for with like the mono green and the lackeys that you can smuggle out and the tank that you can smuggle out. This deck has gone, how many low cost smuggle cards can I fit in a deck? And it's essentially been able to be like, how easily can I get as many +1/+1 counters all over the place as I possibly can?
And you can. And I think one of the most debilitating plays of this is, if you notice, there is, I think, maybe like 8 green cards in the deck. I believe it's... Oh, no, there's 10 green cards in the deck. There's 3 Mauls, 3 of the ship... 11. 2 Overwhelming Barrage and 3 Timely Interventions. So you've got that in there. That's your green package. Everything else is blue.
Except for the 2 Ruthless Assassins.
They're villain, yeah. They're in there just because 3/3, and when you play it, you can ping a shield off of one of your guys and just have a Battlefield Marine and villain. Or ambush it and ping itself and put a counter on it.
But yeah, it is predominantly blue, and Charleston comes in huge for
Which
these
is
sorts
what
of
I was
things.
going to say. You've played Charleston, and then they go, oh my god, he's, you might timely intervention him in, smack and kill something. And then they're like, oh my god, this is like nuts. And they, next turn, they're like, okay, I got to kill him. Swing into him, and you go, awesome, pay 3 covert strength. Heal him 2, put 2 counters on him.
Yeah. And in this situation, and in these situations, it's really easy to be like, oh, but you need the cards in hand. It's like, well, yeah, but if turn 1 I play a Pike Sentinel, and turn 2 I play the 2/2 ship from Smuggle for 3, suddenly I have the card. When I go to turn 4, I have the cards in hand to give them.
You also don't need the cards in hand, because if you draw Covert Strength and Timely Intervention in your opening hand, just resource them. Then you have 6 cards.
I mean, meant for Charleston, like having the cards in hand.
Oh yeah, but still, like
Charleston.
again, yeah, it's like that's the same principle, right? You just are playing stuff from your resources anyway.
So this deck uses Smuggle a lot, which means it holds hand really well.
Yeah, and I love holding hands. Speaking of Han, 2 of them I have. Han 2. That was not a logical leap. This deck went, you know what I love? I love value units. How many value units can I put into one deck?
And we actually played this deck a while ago in the gameplays. It was one of the first decks.
He's the precursor. He's the
before
creator.
the set even released.
I built this.
It's a completely different deck, but it had this similar principle, right?
It did have a vibe. Like, you still ran the Lukes, you still ran the Chewies. I'm pretty sure you had crates in there. I know you had a Mace Windu in there. So, like, the vibe was similar.
Yeah, it was absolutely was, but like
this is just more force.
This is the one where it says, "Hey, what if I just did pure value? No thematics, no just pure value." And this is what it came out as. And this thing can do some nutty things. I think this is this version of the deck is one of like the first iterations of it, and how it's coming out. I think this is going to get refined a lot over the next coming weeks, and as we move into new things, I think this deck is going to be an absolute powerhouse.
You can tell that this is one of the first iterations because it has 1 Takedown, 1 Rabbles 4, and 1 Fell the Dragon, as if the creator of the deck put those in and wasn't sure which of them was the most applicable in universal situations, and thus wants to test that. And to back that theory up, they've got 1 more of each in their sideboard, which means that whenever they found one worked better than the others, they would take them out and put the others in. So essentially, that's what lends me to believe that this is more of like a first draft of the deck, in the sense that someone's like, okay, I'm still figuring out these 3 cards. I know I want these, and there is a lot of 2-ofs, which is great. We love 2-ofs, but you'll notice that there is a lot of 2-ofs, as if someone was deciding the 3-ofs are the cards they're like 100% I want this to stay.
And that was like the value is huge in this. Would you like a 3-cost 4/3 on attack heal your base?
Yes.
Would you like a 2-cost 2/2 restore 2, and when it dies, draw a card?
Yes.
That's just the early stuff that you can do. Let's not even talk about.
Cassian is Battlefield Marine in this deck. Cassian is Battlefield Marine. Like
He's a 2-cost 3/3.
He's a 2-cost 3/3. We know that's good. Worst case scenario, he's a 2-cost 3/3. Best case scenario, you flip him, he comes in untapped. He's a 3/5. Like, and
do you like a 4/2 that 3 cost that can either deal 3 damage or make your opponent discard a card?
which interestingly in this deck, you're actually choosing the discard option more than you were choosing.
Absolutely are. You got
damage.
Pillage in this deck, and you've also got Force Throw, which can be, let me tell you, absolutely huge.
Do you want to tell the anecdote that goes along with that little tale?
Anecdote?
Where you watched a game of someone playing Mono Yellow Boba into this deck, and they turn 1 played a what's it called,
The Mercenary Gunship.
the mercenary gunship, and then one of the people we were in Discord with just went, up, you've lost, and everyone else in the chat was like, what? Like, that's insane. How have they lost?
They proceeded to play the Yoda turn 1, and with no ground unit to be able to kill it, were unable to defeat the Yoda as they proceeded to double Force Throw on their second turn.
Which cleared the board because they have
They
no
have a
choice.
Force unit, and they just go, deal 2 to that. That dies.
And then you go, oh, I'll play this to at least get some value.
Do it again.
Oh, well, I guess I'll discard this big cost card.
And then you had 1 card left in hand going into turn 3. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal, and I would not recommend falling yourself into that position. Force units are terrifying in this deck with Force Throw, and them being able to discard and deal damage at the same time is actually
And then the
huge.
thing is, after they've done all that, you might be like, okay, the onslaught's over. Well, it's not really though, is it? Because they can drop Sabine, they can drop A-Wing, they can play a free R2. Like, they'll just keep going wide, and then you've only got 1 card, and although these units are damaged, it doesn't matter. They've got a 3/1 A-Wing they're just hitting you with now, and a Yoda they're hitting you with, and then next turn they pillage you. You draw 2, you resource 1, and then they hit you with the pillage, and you're like,
Yep.
good game.
And then you go, oh, it's fine. It's fine. What I'll do is I'll stall out for the late game.
Luke, Obi-Wan, Poe, Mace, Redemption, Chewbacca, Crate Dragon. What's your late game? Like, what are you gonna do?
The Crate Dragon coming down at 8. Luke coming down on 6. You saw it in the gameplay. That gameplay, that was one of the biggest things about that deck that really stood out.
It just doesn't matter if he
And it
takes
was
2 damage. It
Luke
just
for
doesn't
6,
matter.
and it's just nutty.
And like,
Poe Dameron for 4 is gross. That's like a 6/4 for 4 is dirty.
especially with all of his abilities.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, like, even if you're like, okay, I'll stall out, you can't though, because the next turn they just go, sick. You know, here's an A-Wing again, this one's full health, and here's a K2. And you're like, what is happening? Like,
And then the biggest thing with this is, and one of the reasons why I said it's not refined, only 2 techs in this deck. It should definitely go up to 3
Definitely go
because
up to
its
3.
ability to just go, okay, cool, I'll just start playing from my resources and be able to hold hand so well against any deck. And just like, I ran against this deck with like a more control-focused deck, and they just did not run out of steam. Could not run out of steam. Just kept playing more
no
units.
matter what, even like, I watched that game and there was a super laser blast and it wiped the Han's board, and the next turn he was just like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and it was like nothing changed.
They're back.
And then it was like, okay, well, I'll kill this, and then the next turn it was just, here's a Luke, here's this again, and the next turn here's a Crate Dragon, and you're like, sucks, because by that time at the late game, you are like, I want to remove this. Cool. What do you want to remove more? Luke Skywalker, Redemption, or Poe?
Yeah.
Like,
Take your pick.
And you've got your 1 removal card. Okay, awesome. You managed to super laser blast them. Great. Okay, here's an A-Wing. Here's a Cassian. Here's a K2. Here's
I'm gonna pay 8 and smuggle out an Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Also, paying 5 for a 4/4 Obi-Wan in this deck is gross.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's so gross.
And that's it. 100%. Every single thing we've said is just gross, and it sucks for your opponent, and that's what it does. That's what this deck does. It says,
Just
I'm going to
sucks.
pay 1
wins
less for
with
all
value.
these really good cards, and you're going to go, oh, I need to remove that, and spend all your resources doing it, and I'm just going to keep doing it until you run out. I'm just going to keep doing it. I don't care if you're running a control deck. I don't care if you're running an aggro deck. I don't care what you're doing. I'm just going to keep doing it until you're forced to trade into me, and when you do, you lose.
Yeah, and it's got the pieces to deal with aggro in that force throw damage, in that Carabas, in the early Canaans, in the takedowns. Like, it's got all of the pieces to be able to deal with decks like that, which is absolutely insane.
And then being able to drop Obi-Wan into Luke and just being like, it's over.
It's over. Like, you're done. There's not a lot you can say about it other
It's
than
a
that.
fantastic deck
Yeah, it really
that
is.
does, I would be
Gross,
very
gross.
surprised if we don't see this deck winning a couple of the
Yeah,
planetary
yeah,
qualifiers,
definitely.
like store showdowns, if not planetary qualifiers.
Yerb. But that's all we got time for this week.
Yeah, that's all. Breaking down the decks. I know there were a couple more decks. We've talked already about a couple of them, though. So we've talked about the mono green Palpatine, and we've talked about the yellow Tarkin, and we've talked about those kind of
gone
decks
through a lot
already.
of the
So
decks
we
already.
wanted to do a few of the decks that we hadn't talked about before.
And also ones that topped and won a tournament. Would it give you a meta review, why these decks are good, like what keeps the wheels turning in these decks. So that way you get an understanding of it. And if you want to play it, well, the deck list would have been flashed up and you can play it. So, but go check out gameplay.
If you want to check out how one of these decks functions, and then also the weird deck I built that is just a deck I wanted to try, go check out the gameplay. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.